Hello, good morning. My name is Daniela Contreras.
Hello, my name is Luciana Garcia.
Hi, my name is Destiny Madrid, and this is our final discussion project for our class in gender religion.
Hello, so my name is Luciana Garcia, and I want to share with you a little bit about my paper for this class and kind of discuss it here together. So my thesis and the focus of my paper was to understand how in Buddhism and Confucianism, how they view the process of spirituality for women and their spiritual worth. I talk a lot more about the difference between how Buddhism saw it and how Confucianism did. And just to share with you the things that I learned, they had very open and different perspectives. With Buddhism, they actually do recognize the spiritual evolution of women. I will look at my resources in the Theri Gata, which is a text. I shared a quote about how a woman wrote her story regarding reaching evolution, how she gained all three knowledges, which is considered something sacred in the path of Buddhism. And that text shows that it was acknowledged that she evolved spiritually. But now we have other texts that kind of validate the point that even though Buddhism see women as spiritually evolved, they still believe that they need to be obedient to men. In the Vinaya Pitaka text, they shared how there's a quote saying, "A nun ordained 100 years must bow to a monk ordained for a male monk ordained for 1 day." So it shows that no matter how long a woman has been ordained, she still needs to be obedient to men. So it's a very conflicting perspective. We see you as evolved, but spiritually, but in this world, you still need to be obedient to men, and you don't have that much worth. So very conflicting paths, but still open. In Confucianism, it's very different because they do not see women as having a path for spiritual evolution. Women are expected to just be obedient to men. Something that we've discussed is how the Book of Rights talks about women needing to obey men before marriage, their father, during marriage, their husband, and if their husband passes away, their male son. And this shows that their value comes from how they are viewed as women based on how obedient they are to men. So overall, in my paper, I discuss the polarity of those two things and the importance of celebrating how women, at least in Buddhism, are seen as they can have a spiritual path. I am an ordained Buddhist priest from the Mahashriya Buddhist tradition, and I also share my experience with a little bit of that conflict. In my tradition, I was ordained and as a woman allowed to be ordained. But when I've traveled to teach like places like Monterrey, Mexico, and I arrived there, they just presented an ordained Buddhist priest is going to come and teach. And I get there and they see it's a woman, and a lot of the respect kind of goes away. Like they don't take it seriously. So that's a little bit of a summary of what I've learned in my paper.
So I have a question for Luciana. She just mentioned that she teaches and she practices too, Buddhism. So I found it really interesting, and I had a question, have a question of how did the energy and reluctance from the male individuals attending that church, how did their energy shift towards the end of your teachings, and how did you not essentially win them over, but like when and how did you notice that shift?
Yes. And this is a good question because I do think it ties a lot to the perspective in Buddhism of how they could recognize that the wisdom of Buddhism has so much truth that women could enlighten because they believe in the wisdom. It's more the things of the world that got in the way. And in my experience, I lived a similar experience. When I arrived at that seminar in Monterrey and I received that judgment, I could notice people were a little closed off, judging, looking at you, wondering, is this really a thing? Women being a Buddhist priest. And then after that, after the seminar and after sharing the wisdom, everybody was very open because they realized it's not about being female, male, or what body you're in. It was about the wisdom that we shared with them. And I feel it ties together to why Buddhists had that door open, like, hey, you can be evolved, but in the world they had still all that limitation that women still experience, the lack of equality.
Right. And I see that like her experience ties in with Tara and Buddhism and how she wanted to spread that wisdom and not necessarily take the place of a male, the dominance of a male, especially in that area. But I think that just really ties, like you have a really good connection with Tara. So I think that was really neat.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question for you, Luciana. I read your paper and I saw that you said that you're Catholicism first, and I just want to know what made you change your religion to Buddhism.
Yes, thank you. And that's a good question. I was raised Catholic. And one of the things that I discovered is how, for me, Catholicism at a certain point became very limited for me. Like, instead of answering more questions, it always told me who I needed to be. And I found it connected to a lot of emotions of guilt and like fear. I was invited years ago to a meditation class that was based in Buddhism. And what I've learned, even through the readings that we've done, the text, and my own experience, is how Buddhism is so much more open to the concepts of spirituality. And I can relate it to why they would see and be able to see women as nuns, because the concept is detachment, letting go of the mental detachment, emotional detachment, physical detachment. Also concepts of compassion, understanding, mindfulness, being aware of being present with your emotions. And it was just so much more open. And that's kind of what drew me in. So it's so ironic that we learn through the text that they can see the wisdom, they can see women being that, and they can at the same time say, but no, in the world you have to be obedient to men. So just very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Destiny Madrid, and in my paper I focused on finding femininity through spirituality. So essentially I wanted to focus on how, or emphasize realistically, on how women are embracing like their roles in Buddhism and Confucianism, and how they're taught to obey a man, obey their sons, obey their fathers, husbands, and then sons. So realistically, like they're trained to do so. And as time went on, ultimately women went into embracing that and saying, you know what, yes, I'm taught to do this, but it's my choice to go ahead and embrace it. And it's my decision to go ahead and create this family, this community. And ultimately that's the feminism in Buddhism and Confucianism, to where, no, I'm not being constricted. Like, this is my doing and this is what I decide to do. So I really found that very powerful. I think I made up that word, but empowering. I just thought it was really important to just showcase that in every world, like, women are and it's also like our choice to go ahead and, you know what, this is set in stone, but this is mine. And that's the empowerment that these religions found. So I also wanted to touch base on how, like, on day-to-day lives, like the women, they'll tend to their kitchens, they'll tend to the gardens, and just making like a home base. And as that's seen as less than as a man, it's also like the glue that makes that family, and it also just emphasizes the importance of a woman and the role that they play in like both religions. They're both different. In Buddhism, there is an individual, her name's Tara, and I did find that Luciana was a really good example of how she had that role of wisdom, and she wasn't necessarily trying to take the power away from a man. She was just trying to say, I may not be like equal as you, but I also have the same offerings that I can offer this without trying to take on that role, which I thought that was important because it shows her importance, but it also shows like yes, she's respecting like the role of a woman and a man. So I thought that was very interesting. So do you girls have any questions? Sorry.
I don't have any questions also right now. I don't know what
Sorry.
you listen.
Yes, I have a question. Well, first, really good that you offered this perspective on the paper because I think many of us automatically make an assumption and judge like how are all of these traditions just not seeing women as equal, and you're bringing that other perspective of removing the word equality. Empowerment can be there because everybody has something different to offer. I love how you explain kind of being the glue of keeping the community going, and how powerful that is, how many things maybe men do they wouldn't be able to do, or masculine, if the community wasn't kind of put together. Did you find that there was a difference between the way women in Buddhism and women in Confucianism showed that empowerment, or did you find anything?
Yeah, so I found in Confucianism, like it was very like, okay, these are the rules, like this is what you have to follow, and that's where the women were like, okay, yes, these are my roles, but then that's where they said, this is like my choice, you know. So it was more like, yes, they're more submissive, but like in their roles, they're like, yes, I'm submitting, but it's my choice to go ahead and do so. Whereas Buddhism, it was like, okay, these are the roles like within the religion. I'm not trying to take away from you, but this is what I can offer you. That's what I found. I mean, I might kind of simplify it a little bit more, but that's what I understood. But realistically, like when I learned from Luciana, I was like, oh my gosh, like
Thank you.
opened a whole world.
Thank you. That was really good.
Yes, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Daniela, and I'm going to talk about Buddhism and Confucianism. But in this case, I'm going to see how women are rewriting history through activism. And for me, this topic is very important because I feel like I'm in a feminist role. So I feel like a little comfortable to talk about this topic. And well, through history, we can see that Buddhism and Confucianism have limited the women, and they don't let her like participate a lot. They have a lot of limitations. They need to be obedient and be there under the orders from men, and I don't think that's right. That's why I think it's important that everyone's know. Right now, sorry, I'm gonna check my phone to see my notes. I want to read this quote that I think it's very important, and it's for Audre Lorde, and she said, "When we speak, we are afraid of words will not be here or welcome, but when we are silent, we're still afraid. So it's better to speak." And I think this quote is very powerful for all the women that is maintaining silence, and they want to be like, I can do it, and we are here to support you. Okay. Like my teamwork said before, in Confucianism, women are like needs to be super obedient. They need to be like perfect women for everyone. They need to be in the norms of what they need to say or how they need to think. And at this point, there's activism in the Confucianism. They are like, you know what? Wait a minute. We're women. We have power. We can do the same that as men do, and we can show you. And I think that it's important. In Buddhism, when in the through the history, we see that nuns have other rules that they need to follow, that the monks don't follow, and they see the nuns like you're not like in the same level that us. They see women from very behind, and now there's people like, let me see again my sources. I'm sorry for the time. Okay, I have Miss, I'm sorry, I can find it. Okay, I think Miss Rita Gross and Tenzin Palmo, it's a good example. Tenzin Palmo, it's a nun who spent over 12 years in a cave looking for traditions and be more like start a movement to help women to raise her voice. And I think this is the importance of the activism, that no one needs to be silenced. They need to raise her voice and see like, hey, you know what, we are here, we are part of the group, and we have the same equals and decisions that men can do. And I think that it's important, like we, like women, we need to speak up and never be silenced. And we're a group. It doesn't matter in what we believe. We don't need to be feeling like away. I don't know if you guys have any question for me.
No, I agree. Sorry.
No, it's
So I think it's very important just to like emphasize like how a lot of these women within the religious group of how they found it like within themselves to go ahead and, you know what, like I'm gonna find my own empowerment, and if you're not gonna like enlighten me, then I'm gonna do it on my own. And look, I'm gonna go through this path so that I can go ahead and just show you like the knowledge that I think. I don't know, I just think it's really impressive and just like, I don't know, it makes me feel good like as a woman to just see like, yeah, like everyone has that within themselves, to just find that and just prove to themselves that they're not just, oh, you're a woman, you know. And I think that's super important to see that in Buddhism and Confucianism. But I don't know.
I guess I would just wanted to ask you, through your research, writing your paper, did you find a difference, and maybe you mentioned already a little bit about it, but how Buddhism and Confucianism go about doing activism? Like how do they do it differently?
Yes, I, without all my research, I saw that in Buddhism, the women are like more like, yes, you know what, let's speak, let's do things in like in a big way. Let's do this conference, let's make more women came and be involved on this movement. And in Confucianism, it's more like slow in a way, like they already know that they want to have that power and they don't want to be silent, but they don't start doing like a big movements yet. They just how they do research and they try to get like ideas, but there's not a big focus at this time. But I hope soon this can change.
And I think something that we recognize together is that even though we all chose different topics, there was a theme of how maybe I focus more on the spiritual empowerment of women and limitation to a certain extent. She focused more on the action through activism, and then Destiny focused more on just the empowerment of the day to day.
Yeah. So I thought that was super interesting how all of our like different topics have, again, like Luciana said, they all tied in together, and it's also like the learnings of the past, and then like the changes that we want for the future, and then how we're embracing like femininity and that empowerment within the present. So I don't know, I thought this was really good. Like it was super interesting. Learned a lot of new stuff. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So-
everyone.
Thank you.